Behold, the dichotomy of the backyard woodpecker, the dastardly duo, the David and Goliath of garden pickets. I mean, kind of, if you have pileated. Anyways, I give you the Downy and Hairy Woodpeckers. Two species not half as closely related as they might appear, yet more than half of their appearance is more closely related than one should like. The Downy and Hairy Woodpeckers might appear like closely related North American woodpeckers. They're currently listed in the same genus, Dryobates, but these two woodpeckers are not sister species. Potentially, they might not even belong in that same genus together. Regardless of their genome, their phenome is almost a true ringer. To translate that, despite their distant DNA, their physical appearances are almost identical. Hope is not lost. While these two woodpeckers appear eerily similar, a few tips and tricks can separate these two woodpeckers in the field. So be prepared as I pump up your ID skills with this video comparison of these two black and white buttes. Oh, and please make sure to like this video and subscribe to the Flocking Around channel. Because I hope this channel supports you, and I hope you are willing to support this flock. First up, let's eliminate an often helpful ID clue, location. While location is helpful in many cases, the ranges of these two species overlap for most of the continent. However, if you live in the most extreme norths or souths of the continent, hairy woodpeckers are more expected than downies. Outside of those extremes, which means everywhere in between, toss out the range. It's not helpful. On to the next clue. What is the most obvious body part when a woodpecker appears outside your window? For many, it's the head and the beak. The heads and beaks of these two species offer a significant difference in size and composition. The downy woodpecker sports a smaller, shorter, more petite bill that has a tuftier tuft at the base with a cute and rounded head. Just their appearance is small and cute. For the hairy woodpecker, expect a larger, more robust bill, usually a more subtle appearing tufty tuft, and then often a flatter head, and because of that flatter headed appearance, maybe a little less cute. In males, the red on the back of the head is solid in downy woodpeckers. In hairies, it's split down the middle. And females in both species lack this red altogether. Now, with all of that in mind, here's a little trick to help you remember which beak belongs to which. If the beak sticks out, it's a hairy, no doubt. If the beak is hard to see, you have a downy. That's a lame rhyme. God, but people will remember because it's so lame. Next up, the body. Yes, the body of the hairy woodpecker is significantly larger than the downy. But that is not the only feature of the body that is helpful in teasing these two species apart. Above the wing and below the throat, the hairy woodpecker has a spur of black that comes from the back of the bird towards the breast. Downy woodpeckers either lack the spur or have a highly reduced version of the spur. Immature hairy woodpeckers might be missing the spur altogether, so do not rely solely upon the lack of the mark to make a confident identification. If it's not a significant spur, you might need to combine some other traits discussed in this video to help make your identification. And finally, we come to the tail. The tail of the tail. You know what, I'm not going to try to make a joke there. The white outer two tail feathers of these two species can be the linchpin of reliable identification. For the hairy woodpecker, The outer two tail feathers lack much, if any, black markings. On downy woodpeckers, the outer two tail feathers can show a variety of black barring or as little as black dots. This trait is one of the most definitive and reliable traits for separating these two species. However, as with any field mark, there is a potential for the lack of or minimal presence of that marking, which can create a misidentification. Downies may show little to no black, and Hairies may show a speck of black. It's rare, but it can happen. When at the extreme end of the graphic you just saw, very little black or a lot of white, use the other combination of traits in this video to make your identification. Okay, here are some quiz photos to try your hand at. I'll give you about 4 seconds per photo, then I'll give you the answers after you're done. Number 1, check out the head, the body, then the tail. Number 2, take a look at the head, then the body, then the tail, if visible. Number 3, head, body, tail, take whatever's visible and use it to the best of your ability. Time for answers. And we hope you don't hear the failure sound. So number 1 is a little bit tricky if you looked at the tail first. The outermost tail feather, it's a bit obscured by the secondmost outer tail feather. So there's no black visible, but if you look closely, you can see, oh, I'm not actually seeing that outer tail feather. There is a small spur-like mark, but it's not very pronounced. The bill is harder to see, which makes us think downy. Remember the rhyme. And the red is not split down the middle. It's a solid red bar, which supports then the other field mark we just discussed, making this a male downy woodpecker. Number 2 is clearly a female, but we cannot see the tail. The spur is very noticeable right off the bat. That bill sticks out, so it supports a hairy, no doubt. The tuft appears significant, which might throw some people off if they focus on that trait too much. But remember, this is used in support of an identification. It is not a reliable trait. And finally, number 3 is a male. The red is split. The outer tail feather, which is most visible from the underside. When tails are folded, the outer feathers usually are the ones closest then to the tree. Okay, so in this case, closest to the camera. And that outer tail feather is bare of marks. And even with this unusual angle, we can still see a hefty bill. And right there along that crease, we can vaguely see that prominent spur. There you have it, the hairy and the downy of the situation, which is woodpecker identification between the hairy and the downy woodpecker. It's not always the easiest call. However, once you start seeing these woodpeckers again and again and again, you will start to notice these very obvious traits. One thing we didn't discuss is voice. The voice of these woodpeckers is significantly different, as well as how they drum, which is, a woodpecker's version of song. But one thing at a time here, people. Let's just get it down to identify them by sight and progress from there. So hopefully this gets you started down that path of hairy and downy woodpecker identification. We'll see you next time. Unless you hated this, in which case we won't see you again.